The first time I ever held a gun, I hit a target 6,000 meters out, and on the exact same day I awakened, I was permanently banned from touching any weapon ever again. The armory locked me out around the clock. Even toy guns made the prohibited list, all because my activation condition, the one specific requirement to unlock my class, was to fire exactly 100 million bullets. My instructors took turns trying to talk me out of it. Military officials called it an impossible task, and so I stayed. Parked myself in that school for 5 years, refusing to graduate because the only place in the world that would let me use a virtual firing range was right there on campus. Today, I had fired 99,909,900 bullets. 100 left. I took a slow breath, picked up the machine gun beside me, and opened up on the target wall. 5 years. 5 years in a world that had been torn open by game-like invasions, monsters bleeding through into every corner of civilization. Only 30% of adults ever awakened a class. Thousands of awakened fighters died on the battlefield every single year. You can imagine the kind of nerve it took to stay in school through all of it, year after year, refusing to leave. Familiar laughter rose up behind me. I didn't need to turn around. It was the same group, students who had already completed their class transitions, back again to watch. Still at it, senior? My little brother is 2 years younger than you, and he's already in a transitioned university, and here you are playing with a machine gun. The one talking had yellow-dyed hair and a voice soaked in contempt. I kept shooting. I'd heard variations of that speech hundreds of times over 5 years. A long time ago, I learned to convert it into fuel and keep moving. The last bullet left the barrel. A chime rang through the room. Congratulations. Class activation objective complete. System records indicate 100 million rounds fired during the activation period. You have achieved a feat with no precedent in recorded history. Class power rating elevated to maximum. Class successfully activated. Transcendent Tier, 9 Heavens. Gunmaster. Class Talent. Mechanical Ascension. Your skill set draws from the complete awakened skill pool across all firearm type classes. Your information cannot be forcibly viewed by others. You cannot be harmed by your own skills. Passive skill. Arsenal of Nations. When energy is insufficient, one skill may be used at no cost. Active skill. Annihilation. Ray. 18 beams of destructive energy, each 100 meters in diameter, descending from the sky above, locks onto and strikes any target at will. All skills drawn from the awakened tier. So this is what it feels like. The satisfaction that hit me in that moment was unlike anything I had words for. I moved immediately, heading straight for the sacred trial hall to sit the graduation exam. The hall was packed. Hundreds of newly transitioned fighters had shown up to challenge the trial dungeons. A staff member called numbers without looking up from his clipboard. When I stepped to the front, the room went quiet for exactly 1 second. Then the whispers started. Isn't that the one who's been held back at Zhangchuan High for 5 years? He actually activated a class. I honestly thought he'd be their mascot forever. Gunmaster isn't even a rare class. What's the big deal? I walked through it without stopping and stepped into the transfer formation. Might as well test out the new skills. I climbed a slope at the edge of the dungeon field, raised my thumb, estimated the distance, and fixed my target on the center of Goblin Castle. Annihilation Ray. 2 words, spoken quietly. The entire region convulsed. 18 pillars of concentrated energy tore down from the sky, each one 100 meters wide, and drove straight into the castle below. The impact was total. Energy spiraled outward from each impact point, erasing everything in its path. Thousands upon thousands of goblin forces dissolved in an instant. The surviving students, those who had been in the middle of their own fights, fled in pure disoriented terror. My experience bar moved like it had lost its mind. Level 41. 1 shot. 41 levels. I activated my storage bracelet and swept the field clean. Tens of thousands of pieces of equipment, weapons, and items vanishing into the ring, along with 1 gleaming SSS rank completion token, gold and heavy, in my hand. When I walked out of the collapsed dungeon, the entire hall had gone completely silent. Every person in that building was staring at me like I was something that shouldn't exist. The staff member's clipboard slipped from his fingers and hit the floor. SSS rank evaluation. He could barely get the words out. How is that even possible? Back at Zhangchuan High, the mood in the teacher's office had been building towards something for a while. A small group of instructors had gathered, voices low, working through the details of how to finally push me out. He's been stalling for years. Pure cowardice. If he stays any longer, he's going to drag this school's reputation down with him. We need to get him to quit on his own terms. Make it his idea. The office door opened. I walked in. Teacher Chin, I'd like to apply for graduation. I set the token on the desk. Gold throughout, dragon carvings along the face, and 3 letters pressed into the surface that caught the light from across the room. SSS. The office went dead silent. SSS. SS rank completion token. The teachers stared at it. The air they pulled in was audible. The contempt that had been sitting behind their eyes a moment ago was gone, replaced by something they clearly hadn't prepared for. I exhaled slowly. Sorry it took this long to get here. 5 years of holding back. I suppose I got complacent. Not one of them said a word. I didn't wait for a response. I raised a hand, said goodbye to no one in particular, and walked out of the school. With what I was carrying now, college wasn't my next move. I opened the skill tree interface. The branches spread across the panel, each one holding a unique awakened skill waiting to be learned. I selected two. First, kinetic slaughter. Passive. Every bullet I fired would carry explosive properties. A snap of my fingers could detonate any round already in flight. Explosive force scaled with strength. Every 100 points of strength multiplied the blast by 100%. Second, quantum stride. Displacement skill. Moonlight underfoot. Instant aerial flash steps. Chained jumps. Burst movement across open ground. For 10 seconds after activation, my body phased into a quantum state. Untargetable. Unreachable. Learning both cost 200 million purple gold coins. I wasn't worried. I opened the exchange market and pulled up the inventory I just cleared from the Goblin Dungeon. Tens of thousands of pieces of equipment, all listed at a 10% discount. The transaction confirmation messages hit my inbox almost instantly, stacking so fast the screen couldn't keep up. My account balance climbed to 340 million. I spent another 100 million right after that. A full set of legendary grade equipment and a pair of dual pistols with infinite ammunition. With everything equipped and the stat bonuses applied, my attributes surged to levels I hadn't anticipated. Strength locked in at 2,150 points. Next destination, Black Rock Volcano. I didn't bother with a transport formation. I triggered Quantum Stride, and my body became a streak of light, covering 200 kilometers in seconds. Below me, a group of freshly graduated students were grinding through a fight against a pack of low-level monsters, struggling more than they probably wanted to admit. They caught a glimpse of something blurring past overhead, and then the shockwave from my footstep alone reduced the elite monster they'd been wearing down for the past 10 minutes to scattered debris. Did that guy just one-shot our elite just by running past? They scrambled for the loot while I was already gone. Black Rock Volcano. Level 60 monsters across every inch of the terrain. The moment I landed, an obsidian giant opened up with a laser from both eyes. A nearby fire spirit let loose a column of flame. Dozens more attacks came raining in from every direction at once. I stood completely still. My body turned translucent, ghost-like, barely there. Every single attack passed straight through me and detonated against the mountain range at my back. Quantum phase. Definitely has some interesting applications. 10 seconds expired. I drew both pistols. The monsters registered what was about to happen and turned to run. Too late. The guns opened up and the entire pack was shredded in seconds. My experience bar jumped twice. 2 levels in one sweep. Not satisfied. Regular monsters weren't going to cut it. I turned my gaze toward the volcano itself, the massive, looming peak at the center of the zone. 10 Lord-class bosses were nested somewhere inside it. Deep within the volcano, a 100-person elite raid group was barely holding together. 10 Dragonflame Beast Lords were pushing them into a corner. Their power had spiked far beyond what the team had prepared for, and each one carried a terrifying regeneration ability that kept undoing every point of damage dealt. The raid leader screamed orders into the chaos, but it was already too late. They were completely surrounded. Then someone walked in, unhurried, spinning both pistols lazily with one hand, like he was taking a morning stroll through his own backyard. Someone in the group shouted a warning. I didn't respond. I walked past them all into the center of the fight. What followed was difficult to describe as combat. It looked more like performance. I moved through the monster lines at blinding speed, shells flying in every direction, body twisting and rotating through the air, both guns firing simultaneously from inverted positions overhead. Every bullet curved around allied players without touching them. Small monsters dropped in clusters. Even the Lord-class Dragonflame beasts were staggering, taking hits they couldn't absorb fast enough. The raid group seized the opening and pushed hard for the exit. Then one of the Dragonflame Beast Lords let out a roar and activated mass resurrection. Every monster that had gone down surged back to its feet at once. The players who had already made it outside looked back and shouted for everyone to run. These things couldn't be killed. No point fighting anymore. I jumped, landed on a rock formation jutting out above the crowd, holstered both guns, and looked down at the army below. You might want to step back, unless you want a front row seat. A few people actually laughed despite themselves. I snapped my fingers. Art is an explosion. Every single bullet I had fired, thousands upon thousands of rounds embedded in monster bodies across the entire zone, detonated simultaneously. The explosions came from the inside out. The force was absolute. Black Rock Volcano itself was launched skyward. A colossal mushroom cloud rose above the peak, reshaping the horizon. Level 50. My experience bar shattered its limit again, but my expression stayed flat because the kill notifications I was waiting for never came. All 10 Lord-class bosses. Not a single confirmed elimination among them. I didn't know what a real marksman looked like until right now. one of the raid members muttered quietly. Weebow users are playing a completely different game. Then the ground moved again. The volcanic crater, blown wide open just moments ago, began venting a torrent of black energy. Every member of the 100-person team felt it hit them before they could see it. That same black energy had been the reason they'd nearly wiped earlier. The monsters infected by it had been something else entirely. Now the source itself had surfaced. The ground split. A skull the size of a small building clawed its way up from beneath the earth. 100 meters tall, trailing darkness, black vapor pouring from its eye sockets. It spoke. "So you're the one who ruined my plans." I pulled out both guns again. The raid members looked up at the skull's information display. Then their legs stopped working. Death Knight Skull, level 366. All other attributes listed as unknown. The skull of an ancient Death Knight, severed from its body and left to wander. This was it, the missing piece. Several people simply sat down on the ground. The Death Knight was in the same tier as a national-level disaster entity. Rumors said it had once taken 10 major guilds fighting together to bring it down, and 6 of their elders still didn't make it out. The skull opened its mouth. Darkness swallowed everything within range in an instant. Black Rock City, the entire settlement, was plunged into sudden, total shadow. Residents panicked in the streets. Up on the city wall, a middle-aged man with rough stubble across his jaw stood with narrowed eyes fixed on the horizon. He recognized the skill immediately, the Death Knight's signature ability. But the Death Knight had been destroyed. He'd been certain of it. He was the current Lord of Black Rock City, and the knot forming in his chest told him that if what he was seeing was real, there was nothing within his power to stop it. An old voice came from behind him, unhurried, calm. "So, an undead remnant found its way to our doorstep." The city lord turned. A white-haired elder in a martial arts robe stood with both hands clasped behind his back, gazing out into the dark. "Elder, weren't you in closed cultivation? You were close to breaking through to the 6th transmission. The undead are knocking," the old man said simply. He stroked his beard, eyes calm as still water. "Cultivation can wait." He paused, then continued in a low, measured tone. "As a precaution, contact the nearby cities. Now, back at the volcano." A blood-red moon hung in the sky above the crater. The Death Knight skull threw its head back and roared, and the sound shook the earth beneath every player's feet. The monsters that had been destroyed minutes ago rose again, every last one of them, returning in spectral form. Pale blue fire coiled around their bodies. They were faster now, stronger. Their abilities had shifted into something stranger and far more dangerous than before. The raid members who had survived this long stared at what was reforming around them. These things were worse than before. The 100-person raid team looked like they'd already accepted death. They couldn't beat the regular lava beasts before. The undead-enhanced versions were something else entirely. There was no version of this where they survived. 2 of the lava beasts slammed their feet down simultaneously. The ground cracked apart across 10 kilometers in every direction. Columns of ghost fire erupted skyward. The shockwave threw people off their feet before the heat even reached them. Screams layered over each other from every direction. The team had never recovered from the first wave. They had nothing left to absorb this. But the Death Knight skull wasn't finished. It opened its mouth wide and began pulling the souls of every lesser monster in the vicinity inward, absorbing them one by one, fusing them together. The collection of stolen spirits coiled and compressed, and slowly, something took shape within it. Shade Lolita, elite monster, level 60. She descended gradually, holding a crimson parasol, dressed in a floor-length black gown. Her tongue ran across her lips. Her pupils glowed a deep, hungry red. The raid members nearly lost their composure entirely. Her stats were more broken than the Lord-class bosses. The team's female fighter spun around frantically, looking for any sign of the mysterious gunman. He was the only one who could pull them out of this now. I was leaning against a rock formation, spinning one pistol casually around my finger, a faint smirk at the corner of my mouth. The more the skull summoned, the better. Every new monster meant more experience and more loot falling into my storage ring for free. The Shade. Lolita tilted her head and studied me with genuine curiosity. She could sense something in my presence, a dense, layered energy signature that interested her. "Human, if you beg me, I might consider letting you serve as my slave." I let out a short laugh. "You've got decent taste, I'll give you that. All you'd have to do is bring me a few humans each day for feeding, and lick my feet. 3 pounds worth, daily." I gave her a flat look. "Not interested in feet, especially not yours." Her hair bristled. Her arm swung the parasol upward. One gunshot. The arm holding the parasol came apart at the joint. Her shriek tore across the entire zone. The raid members stared. Normal gunners relied on skills for their damage output. Nobody trained their basic attack accuracy to that level. Nobody. Above them, the Death Knight skull roared. "All of you, die." A sphere of light gathered in its open mouth, brilliant as a small sun. Building pressure. I raised my thumb, estimated the distance, adjusted my angle. Annihilation ray. The beams dropped from the sky before the skull could release its attack. A creature over 300 levels thick, and it folded like wet paper, pierced clean through in an instant. First kill confirmed. Death Knight skull eliminated. 10,980,000 experience points awarded. Level cap reached at 60. Please complete your second transition at your earliest convenience. The darkness retracted from Blackrock City all at once. The Elder and the City Lord, who had been rushing toward the volcano, stopped in their tracks. The creature that deployed that domain. It's been dealt with, the Elder said quietly, his clouded eyes wide with something he rarely felt anymore. Out in the distance, I was already sorting through the drops. Legendary item, 10,000 soul gold spirit. Hero-grade equipment. Undead guardian relic. I tapped the ground with one foot, triggered quantum stride, and vanished. The Elder's pupils contracted sharply. Even at his level, he'd barely been able to track the movement of that young gunner. Elder, are you alright? I'm fine. Go check on the situation. When they reached the blast site, the raid team was still standing in stunned silence. The squad leader managed to pull himself together long enough to describe what had happened. A gunner, one shot, the elite creature gone instantly. But by the time he finished the sentence, even he realized the person was already long gone. The Elder exhaled slowly. That young man, the one he'd barely glimpsed from the city wall. That was the same person who had just erased a domain-class entity in a single strike. I walked back into the transition hall and slid my ID card across the front desk to the girl with twin ponytails working the counter. She led me to the transition steely and stepped back. I rubbed my hands together. Second transition. More powerful skills waiting on the other side. A free 1,000-point stat boost on top of everything else. I pressed my palm to the surface of the steely without hesitating. The panel appeared. Second transition requirements. 1. Clear the level 60 dungeon, Witch Forest, with an SSS rank evaluation. 2. Win 100 consecutive matches in the ranked arena. I understood immediately why so many people spent their entire careers stuck before the second transition. The SSS evaluation alone was enough to make most people walk away. The 100-win arena streak was the kind of requirement that existed to filter out everyone who didn't belong. For me, neither condition was worth losing sleep over. I accepted both tasks, waved off the front desk girl's cheerful prediction that she'd see me again in 6 months, and turned for the door. Thanks. Shouldn't take long. Witch Forest. Before I even got comfortable, I sold off everything I'd looted from Blackrock Volcano. Account balance climbed to 1.1 billion. I turned around and spent 100 million of it on a new skill from the tree. Cyber Guanyin Summon. Active. Calls forth a mechanized divine construct built by Celestial Tier Technology. The mech carries its own combat abilities. After the user exits the cockpit, the core energy unit can be detonated remotely at any time. I stared at the description for a long moment. A tank that doubles as a nuclear device. In one skill slot, this is what it means to be alive. I stepped through the Witch Forest portal. 1,000 hawk wave bats swarmed me the moment I landed. They pulled a pack of wolf demons with them on the way in. I didn't bother raising my weapons. I activated the quantum phase state and let every attack pass through my body without registering. Then I deployed the mech. Fragments materialized from nothing, assembling around me at speed, locking into place. A mechanical construct nearly 100 meters tall, taking shape around me in seconds. I settled into the cockpit and looked at the control panel. 12 skill keys spread across the console in front of me. I almost couldn't contain myself. I grabbed the controls and threw the Cyber Guanyin straight into the swarm. Basic attacks only. Every mechanical arm swinging simultaneously. Hundreds of hawk bats, and the trees they roosted in getting demolished in the same motion. The wolf demon pack that followed got flattened into the ground without ceremony. Massive damage dealt. Evaluation updated to C rank. In any other context, a 100-armed construct tearing through a forest would be the kind of catastrophic technique that defined legends. For me, right now, it was a basic attack. One objective, SS evaluation. One path to get there. Find the dungeon boss at the deepest point of the Witch Forest. I pointed the mech forward and drove it through the trees like a moving disaster. And in doing so, made myself impossible to ignore for every other transitioner currently working inside that dungeon. What in the world is that thing? Several teams of transitioners deeper in the dungeon had stopped moving entirely. They were staring at the distant silhouette of the mechanical construct moving through the trees, something between a divine idol and a war machine, nothing like any creature cataloged in the system. Cyber Guanyin? I've never heard of that monster type before. Remember the news out of Blackrock City? That undead entity that showed up there? You think this thing is in the same tier? Look at the direction it's heading. It's going straight for the dungeon boss, the corrupted dragon. Are we watching two bosses about to fight each other or team up? up. The panic spread fast. Nobody waited to find out. Every transitioner in the area activated their emergency communication devices and pushed out the highest priority distress signal available. The Border City Command Post received the alert and triggered the alarm immediately. A comms officer sprinted into the chamber of the Supreme Commander, nearly losing his footing on the way through the door. Commander Xiao, emergency. Witch Forest. An unidentified divine-class entity has appeared. Unknown type. Suspected celestial origin construct. When Yanxiao's expression darkened in an instant, he moved to the deployment platform without a word. 10,000 elite soldiers stood assembled below, waiting. All personnel second transition and above. Immediate deployment. Witch Forest. An unidentified celestial construct entity has appeared in divine class form. Threat classification. Maximum. Objective. Assess and intercept before it reaches the corrupted dragon. Move. The order landed clean and short. 10,000 hardened soldiers shifted into formation and poured toward the forest without hesitation. None of them knew that the entity they were mobilizing against was a 20-something in a cockpit who had spent the afternoon farming loot. I had no idea any of this was happening. I was too busy enjoying my new toy. I reached the center of the forest, and there it was, the corrupted dragon, enormous, rotting across every surface, its scales splitting open with decay. No preamble. I grabbed its tail with both of the mech's hands and started swinging it into the ground repeatedly like I was trying to tenderize something. The dragon hit the dirt over and over, each impact sending cracks spreading across the dungeon floor. It reformed each time, black magic knitting the damage back together almost instantly. In a nearby cave, a group of transitioners from a local awakened family had been working on this boss for a while before getting pinned down. They saw their opening and bolted, but paused just long enough to watch what was happening outside. The Cyber Guanyin was using the dragon as a club. They left faster after that. Stubborn, I muttered at the dragon. I stepped out of the cockpit and set the mech's core detonation on a 30-second timer as I exited. Mech's about to blow, I called out toward the distant spectators, still watching from the tree line. Might want to move. They absolutely moved, quickly and without dignity. 30 seconds later, the Cyber Guanyin's core energy unit released everything it had stored. A column of crimson fire expanded outward for kilometers in every direction, filling the dungeon interior from wall to wall. The shockwave punched straight through the dungeon entrance and hit the 10,000-strong military force arriving outside hard enough to knock the front lines off their feet. Congratulations. Corrupted Dragon eliminated. SSS rank evaluation achieved. First stage of transition mission complete. I activated Quantum Phase and stood quietly in the middle of the inferno, watching it burn. By the time the soldiers fought their way inside, there was nothing left. Scorched ground in every direction. Not even the equipment drops remained. I'd already swept everything into storage and was halfway back to Jiangchuan City. Second stage, Arena. 100 consecutive wins. I pulled up the task panel and read the requirement again. 100 wins in the ranked arena, no breaks. One loss meant starting the count over from 0. Whoever designed this requirement was either a genius or genuinely cruel. Probably both. Class counters existed for a reason. No one could guarantee an unbroken win streak against the full range of opponents the national matchmaking pool could throw at you. For most people, this condition alone was a career-ending wall. For me, it was a scheduling question. I looked up the rulebook briefly. Participants' real identities were hidden during matches. The matching range was nationwide, and, interestingly, the arena allowed one versus many challenges. A single player could queue into a team of 10. The attendant handed me a combat badge worth 100,000 purple gold coins. The badge ensured participants couldn't actually die inside. Damage translated to full pain feedback with no permanent consequence. I looked at the badge. Then I looked at the 1v1 portal. Then I kept walking past it toward the far end of the hall, the smallest, least used portal in the building. The 1 versus 10 entrance. The attendant called after me. A few people nearby murmured to each other. I waved without turning around and stepped through. The portal deposited me in a pure white preparation space. I thought for a moment about what to enter as my display name. I typed 2 characters, Unrivaled, Match Found, Your Opponent, Bounding Wolf Squad. On the other side, the Bounding Wolf Squad were significantly less pleased about this than I was. They were a top 6-star ranked team, one of the most consistent lineups at that tier. And their matched opponent was a single player. Word spread fast. Spectators poured into the broadcast room. Someone in the audience recognized the squad name immediately. Bounding Wolf. Those were the players who had deliberately stalled their progression below second transition, just to farm wins and titles at the 6-star tier. Veteran players. Strategic, calculating. 99% of the audience put their money on the squad. Zhao Riyan, the squad's leader, looked at the matchup information with open contempt. A gunmaster, alone. The system must be broken. The countdown ended. Both sides were transported to the arena. Zhao Riyan's call was immediate. Spread out, anti-gunner formation. Now, the squad dispersed in practiced coordination, fanning into the optimal arrangement for pressuring a ranged attacker from multiple angles simultaneously. I pulled out both pistols and fired a single sweep of basic attacks across the formation. Zhao Riqian actually laughed. Basic attacks? Is this a joke? The audience shifted from stunned silence to open mockery. Then I snapped my fingers. Remember this, marksmanship is its own kind of art. Every bullet already in flight transformed simultaneously. Dozens of miniature fire charges, detonating at point of contact with each squad member at the exact same instant. The entire arena lit up. Bounding Wolf Squad, eliminated. All members. Match winner. Unrivaled. Current win streak. 10 consecutive. The broadcast room went completely silent for 3 full seconds. Then it exploded. Is this guy even playing the same class as other gunmasters? The second match started almost immediately. The opponent this time was Far East Squad. The new viewers stared at the explosion still filling the screen and said nothing for a long moment. Then, quietly, they began to understand what it actually meant when people said the only truth was within firing range. The matches that followed blurred together. Top 8 nationally, top 7, world top 5, world top 3, Gods of War Squad, all members eliminated, match winner, unrivaled, win streak, 100 consecutive. I looked at my competitive score sitting at 2,010,000 points. The arena champion title sitting freshly in my profile. The 1,000-point boost applied across every stat. I nodded once. Not bad. I went to complete a class transition and ended up ranked first in the country along the way. Back at the transition hall, the twin ponytail attendant saw me walk through the door and lost the ability to form complete sentences. You finished already? That was how... It wasn't complicated. Mostly a one-skill situation. I stepped up to the Steely and submitted both completed requirements. 2 second transition class options materialized on the panel. 10,000 spells. Gunmaster. Spirit. God Gunmaster. One was versatile across every situation. The other was pure, focused destruction. I picked the first without any hesitation. Violence was a tool. Technology was the future. Congratulations. Second transition. Complete 10,000 spells. Gunmaster. 1,000 attribute points awarded. The surge of power that moved through me was immediate and physical. I opened my attribute panel. Strength. 4,800 points. 1 bullet. 48 tons of TNT equivalent force. I could genuinely start using nuclear scale damage as a casual benchmark from here on out. After finishing all the paperwork, I left the hall and headed home. The moment I opened the front door, the television was shaking the walls. Both of my aunts were spread across the couch in full relaxation mode, snacks in hand, completely horizontal, deeply invested in whatever drama was playing. I didn't bother asking why neither of them had gone to work. The answer was always the same. They enjoyed living rent-free and felt no shame about it whatsoever. By the way, I activated my class. I dropped it casually as I passed through. Zhang Xiui's hand paused over her snack bag. Then she tilted her head back toward me with the energy of someone who hadn't moved in hours. Fine, good that you activated. Since you're a transitioner now, you'll need to go back to the old hometown in a few days. Hometown. That word landed strangely. My parents had never once mentioned anything about a hometown worth going back to. Don't ask. You'll understand when you get there. She waved me off, then seemed to remember something. What class did you activate? Gunmaster. I kept it short, turned toward the kitchen, and started on dinner. The question of university didn't come up. I had no intention of bringing it up. Behind me in the living room, Zhang Xiui watched my back with a slow smile forming at the corner of her mouth. This kid was hiding something, changing the subject that smoothly wasn't innocent behavior. The curiosity in her eyes sharpened. She cast an information inspection technique on me. Silent, subtle, the kind that left no trace. If I had turned around in that moment, I would have seen an expression on her face that didn't belong there, because what her technique returned was nothing. Not blocked, not protected, just nothing. A void where the data should have been. Unreadable, unresolvable. She didn't accept that. Her eyes shifted, faint blue light gathering in the irises as she pushed harder. A higher tier inspection this time, one that could sweep electromagnetic signals across a 10-kilometer radius. In the kitchen, the range hood clicked and went silent. Zhang Xiui's expression had left relaxed entirely behind. Still nothing. Interesting. Whatever this kid had transitioned into, or whatever he'd stumbled across, it wasn't something she could read, and that meant it wasn't something she could categorize. That hadn't happened to her in a long time. At dinner, she reached into her bag and slid a card across the table toward me. Pure black. No markings on the front. A friend passed this along. Consider it an aunt's gift. I picked it up, looked at it once, and stopped moving. A guild application card for Mechanical Labyrinth City. I looked up at her. Your friend. Who exactly is that? I have a lot of people chasing after me. Something like this is nothing to them. She smiled with considerable satisfaction. and went back to eating. After dinner, I went straight to my room and looked it up. The information I found made the card feel heavier. Mechanical Labyrinth City was one of the 3 premier guilds in the country. Member benefits were exceptional across every category, and most importantly, the guild was exceptionally private about who they let in. Decision made. I was applying first thing in the morning. Free resources didn't collect themselves. The next morning, I was scrolling through the news feed when I realized every headline was about me. Shocking. Mysterious fighters bullets. Carry nuclear level force. 100 consecutive wins. The internet desperately seeks contact information for the unrivaled god. Celestial gold thread. Cyber Guanyin sighted. Suspected new class divine entity from the upper realm. I sat very still for a moment. Someone had filmed the entire mech deployment sequence and posted it. The internet had classified my Cyber Guanyin as a divine creature that had wandered down from the celestial plane. This was going to attract attention, the kind that compounded over time. I needed to keep pushing my strength higher before any of that attention turned into a real problem. Before heading out, I opened the skill tree and found 2 new abilities unlocked by the second transition. Revelation Curtain. Passive. Ignore level restrictions and information hiding effects. View complete data on any target. Cost. 500 million purple gold coins. Bullet time. Active. Slow the world, as perceived, through the user's eyes. The more mental energy consumed, the greater the deceleration multiplier. Cost. 500 million purple gold coins. The passive was immediately useful. The active skill was something else entirely. Enough mental energy, and even light speed could be reduced to a crawl from my perspective. I spent 1 billion coins without blinking, and learned both. I arrived at the Mechanical Labyrinth City Guild branch shortly after. The building was a massive mechanical fortress, gears and towers and reinforced architecture in every direction. Out front, a crowd of wealthy families had already gathered, trying to negotiate their children's way inside. At the center of their attention stood 2 guild guards, postures carrying the particular arrogance of people who controlled access to something everyone wanted. I walked past the entire line, stepped up to the entrance, and pulled the black card from my storage bracelet. The 2 guards looked at the card. Their posture changed completely. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something closer to urgency. They stepped aside and personally escorted me in. I walked into the fortress without breaking stride, and was immediately assigned SVIP escort service that the other new recruits weren't getting anywhere close to. The card my aunt gave me was apparently a bigger deal than she'd let on. I ignored the standard mission board entirely, and went straight for the highest difficulty listing available. Northeast border, emergency deployment. Repel spirit invasion. If I was going to do this, I was going to do it properly. I grabbed the temporary ID tag, walked to the transport formation, and got sent to the border city of Mo City. The moment I landed, the air tasted like ash and burning ozone. Beyond the city walls, a massive blue energy barrier was absorbing a constant barrage from the outside. The pressure waves rolling off it were visible to the naked eye. The defense line was clearly struggling to hold. I found the guild way station quickly. About 20 other young transitioners had already gathered inside, all of them having picked up the same mission. A guy in a blue mage robe spotted me and waved me over with the energy of someone who'd been waiting for company. "You're here for the spirit invasion mission too? Come sit. Let's talk." I nodded and walked over, asked about the specifics. A warrior type nearby answered, and the tone of his voice made it clear he wasn't thrilled about the assignment. "We're escorting a supply convoy to the front line, about an hour before we move out. Fair warning, the moment you step outside the walls, the domain from the Spirit Lord class creatures kicks in. Storage bracelets, transport beacons, everything gets suppressed. No shortcuts. We carry the supplies with our own hands and our own legs through whatever's out there." He shook his head. "Whoever designed this mission needs to take a long look at their life choices." Another guy in the group looked me over with curious eyes. "What's your name? Which combat academy did you come from?" "Yi Gang." "No academy. Self-taught." The warmth in the room dropped several degrees immediately. Nobody said anything directly, but the shift in eye contact was unmistakable. Wild card with no institutional background. Not the profile they were hoping to travel with. I genuinely didn't care. I found an open corner, sat down, and closed my eyes. Then the way station door opened. A tall woman in holy knight armor stepped through. Her face was composed into something just below freezing. The moment she appeared, the entire room's atmosphere shifted. Every conversation stopped, every head turned. I opened my eyes. Then I kept staring, because she looked almost exactly like a younger version of my aunt. Same face structure, same eyes with that particular shape. Like they'd been carved from the same template. The only difference was the energy they carried. This woman radiated a deliberate coldness that my aunt's loud, shameless personality had never come close to. Half the room immediately tried to introduce themselves. "Ling Rong. I'm from the school next to yours. You defeated me in 3 moves at last year's inter-school tournament. Do you remember me?" Others pressed in behind him, angling for any kind of connection. The woman responded with 4 words. "I remember." Then she stopped engaging entirely. Nobody seemed to mind. They kept circling anyway. She was the granddaughter of a senior elder builder in Mechanical Labyrinth City, a Zhang family daughter from the capital. None of these people would normally get within speaking distance of someone at that level. Why are you staring at me? Her eyes had found me in the corner. The tone wasn't a question. Every head in the room swiveled my direction. The round-faced man next to me jumped in quickly, clearly worried about what a self-described nobody was about to say to someone he absolutely should not antagonize. I spoke anyway. You look like someone I know. Zhang Lingrong's eyes narrowed slightly. She studied my expression for a moment, found nothing calculated in it, and let out a short sound through her nose. Drop it. She didn't bring it up again. An hour later, we moved out. 20 Camel Mountain beasts loaded with supplies, our group forming a protective formation around them. We entered the giant timber forest and immediately had company. Hundreds of creatures closing in from every direction through the trees. Weapons came out. The fighting started. The round-faced man nearby was still grinding through a tense exchange with an elite-class creature when I pulled out both pistols and started working through the crowd at a relaxed pace. One shot, one creature down. Every single time, the bullet finding the eye socket or the throat. The 2 points where the armor value meant nothing. Brother, your aim is something else. You're outperforming people who trained at actual institutions. It's fine. My skills are nothing special, so I put the work into basic accuracy. What I didn't mention was that every basic attack I fired carried 100% armor-piercing true damage. These thick-skinned creatures went down the same way soft targets did. The difference was invisible from the outside. The convoy stopped. 5 diverging paths opened up ahead through the trees. Every direction looked identical. The group immediately erupted into competing opinions about which way to go. I quietly activated Revelation Curtain. All 5 paths resolved in an instant. The middle route was clean. The other 4 had creatures waiting in them. Positioned, patient, ready. I took a slow breath and spoke with the measured tone of someone accessing ancient knowledge. I can smell it. The center path, the air is cleanest there. The other 4 all carry blood on them. The round-faced man stared at me. You have a talent for that? The others were skeptical, but Zhang Lingrong cut through the debate with 5 words. Listen to him. Stop talking. Everyone took the center path. They walked through without encountering a single creature. The next several forks went the same way. Each time I offered my assessment using the language of supernatural instinct. Each time we passed through without incident. Nobody questioned the method after the 3rd correct call. By the time the front line came into view, the sounds reaching us were already heavy. Explosions layering over each other. Combat shouts cutting through the smoke. The sight that greeted us when we cleared the tree line made the entire group pull in a sharp breath. The front line position had been overrun. The guild member leading our convoy screamed for a formation and charged forward. Zhang Lingrong moved first. Massive wings erupted from her back, golden light wrapping around her frame, and she hit the battlefield like a lightning strike. Something in me stirred. I activated Revelation Curtain and let her information surface. 4th transition, peak tier. That explained the confidence. She'd earned every bit of it. The jump from 3rd to 4th transition was the kind of threshold that broke most people permanently. A wall that swallowed careers whole. She was already cutting through the front lines with that golden energy blazing around her, taking down elite creatures in clusters. The 4th transition requirement wasn't just about combat strength. It tested something deeper, a fighter's understanding of the laws that governed the world itself. You didn't reach that tier on raw power alone. She was earning every bit of that reputation in real time. On the battlefield below, Zhang Lingrong moved through the chaos like a force of nature. Golden enhancement auras bloomed outward from her feet in layered rings. Crescent waves of golden sword energy swept out in the hundreds, cutting through entire formations of creatures with each pass. She even summoned a celestial fortress above the field, raining down concentrated fire on the creature lines while a chorus of sacred sound filled the air around it. Impressive. She even brought her own soundtrack. I rolled my shoulders, drew both pistols, and moved into the fight behind her. No wasted motion. Every shot placed at the exact point of highest vulnerability. The experience kept coming in steady waves. Level 68, level 69. Then the battlefield changed. From 10 kilometers out, dozens of mechanical crocodiles in the 200 level range entered the engagement. Natural-born snipers, every one of them, capable of firing hypersonic bone spike projectiles from their mouths with almost no warning. The projectiles hit the field in coordinated volleys almost instantly, locking onto the brightest target available, Zhang Lingrong. She was surrounded on 3 sides, her sword arm moving at its limit, and the incoming fire density was building past what she could deflect. She felt it before she could fully react. I activated bullet time. The world dropped to 1% of its normal speed. Those hypersonic projectiles, moving at velocities that made them nearly impossible to track, became slow-drifting shapes hanging in the air in front of me, lazy and readable as floating debris. I raised both guns and worked through them methodically, bullet meeting bone spike, each collision detonating in a small burst of energy, clearing the volleys one by one before any of them reached her. Zhang Lingrong's eyes went wide. She stared at me, stared at what I'd just done. Intercepting supersonic projectiles with aimed fire wasn't a technique that existed in any training manual manual she'd ever read. "Why are you staring at me?" I said, keeping my voice flat. She blinked. Color moved into her face. That was exactly what she'd said to me back at the way station. She looked away. After clearing the incoming fire, I raised one hand toward the mountain range 10 kilometers out and fired 10 shots in a casual arc. "They're too far," Zhang Lingrong said. "You can't hit targets at that range." She didn't know yet where the snipers actually were. Neither did anyone else on the field. "It's fine," I said. "Let the bullets travel." I smiled once, made an excuse about checking the perimeter, and disappeared from the battlefield in a blur of movement. I wasn't chasing the sniper creatures. They were a side note. My actual target was the thing that had caused all of this in the first place. 3 seconds after I left, I snapped my fingers. 10 kilometers away, an explosion equivalent to nearly 500 tons of TNT reshaped the geography. The entire hillside where the mechanical crocodile snipers had been positioned went airborne. The mountain peak they'd been using as cover ceased to exist. By then, I was already crossing the battlefield at speed, covering dozens of kilometers in moments, rising to a position above the inner core zone. What I saw when I got there made even me pause. At the front line's deepest point, a mechanical creature the size of a skyscraper was working through the battlefield with a dozen massive metal tentacles. Every strike it landed cracked the earth open and bent the space around the impact point. Dozens of high-tier fighters, people with genuine strength behind them, were being pushed back meter by meter, unable to find a way through. I pulled up its information. Spirit-corrupted mechanical construct, Krang, level 400, attack power, 1,638,392. As I watched, Krang's chest cavity opened wide and released thousands of thick laser beams simultaneously, burning long scorched trenches across the ground in every direction. A group of high-tier machinists responded together, slamming both palms into the earth, summoning over a dozen massive energy reflection mirrors to try to redirect the beams back at the source. "The spread is too wide. Our mirrors can't hold against that volume," Krang answered by swinging 2 tentacles sideways into the mirror array. The sound was like a building collapsing. Every mirror shattered into light. The machinists behind them got thrown back by the shockwave. "Don't trade blows with it directly. Sever the tentacles. We can't get close to the body otherwise." The elder in mechanical labyrinth city robes shouted the order. 60-plus fighters responded at once, pouring everything they had into coordinated strikes. Sword energy, lightning constructs, fire, and ice colliding in overlapping waves, all of it focused on Krang's extended limbs. Under that combined pressure, several of the massive tentacles cracked and broke apart. For one moment, there was something that felt like hope. Then Krang's frame pulsed with dark energy. Every broken piece reversed direction, flowed back, reconnected. New tentacles grew from the repair sites, larger than the ones they replaced and hitting harder. Several transitioners who couldn't clear the blast radius in time took direct strikes and went down. The remaining fighters felt the shift in the room. This creature didn't just have a mechanical body. It had retained the regenerative biology of a spirit-class entity. Every point of damage they dealt would be undone. Someone called out that Krang had begun moving. It was heading toward the city behind the line. The elder pulled in a ragged breath, knuckles white around his weapon, something resolved and final moving behind his eyes. "They drove this thing here deliberately, using specialized equipment to herd it straight to our border. This is a borrowed blade. They're using the creature to drain our high-tier fighting strength without direct engagement." A general-class fighter nearby spoke with barely contained fury. "It's not just the northern cold country. The smaller nations to the southeast, and the Eagle Nation across the water. They all have the same hand in this. They can't face us directly, so they run the Wolfpack approach. Hit the borderline from 100 different points simultaneously. Keep our strongest assets scattered so they can never concentrate." The elder looked at the creature moving toward the city. His expression settled into something quiet and absolute. "Everyone clear a path for me. I'll self-destruct at point blank. Even this thing can't regenerate through that." The people around him erupted immediately. "If you sacrifice yourself, you're giving them exactly what they wanted. One of our senior elders gone, and nothing to show for it." The argument died mid-sentence. Someone's arm went up, pointing skyward. Their voice came out shaking. "Look up. Everyone look up." Every head on the battlefield tilted back toward. From the darkness above, something was falling. Massive, sacred, radiating an authority that pressed down on the battlefield like a physical weight. A cyber thousand-hand Guanyin, hundreds of meters tall, screaming down from 10,000 meters above, at a velocity that made the air around it ignite. The sheer pressure of its descent was enough to stagger everyone below before it even made contact. I stood at the highest point of the sky, looking down at all of it. I had already given the mech its instructions. The rest was automatic. The cyber Guanyin hit the battlefield like a divine judgment. One palm came down. It drove mechanical Krang straight into the earth with the full weight of its descent. No contest, no exchange, just one absolute motion that ended the conversation entirely. The ground beneath the impact cratered outward in every direction. The shockwave that followed swept everything in the surrounding area off its feet. Fighters, debris, everything, sent airborne in a single expanding ring of force. The sound that came after was enormous, and then there was silence. The dust settled slowly. When visibility returned, the cyber Guanyin stood motionless at the center of the battlefield, tall, still, surrounded by the golden haze of its own energy. Beneath its foot, what remained of mechanical Krang. It's helping us. Mo City is going to make it. The surviving fighters stood frozen between shock and relief, watching the mechanical divine construct hold its position above the battlefield. Then Krang began to move again. Deep inside its frame, a small blue spirit figure, the creature's true core, was forcing the reconstruction process to restart, piece by piece pulling the mechanical body back together from the wreckage. The Cyber Guanyin's electronic eyes burned red. It did not wait. All 1,000 mechanical arms came down simultaneously in a relentless assault on the reforming body below, striking, grabbing, tearing apart every new limb the moment it began to take shape. When Krang managed to extend a tentacle, 3 of the Guanyin's arms seized it and ripped it apart before it could fully extend. When Krang fired its laser array directly into the mech's frame, the beams dissolved against the golden energy barrier without leaving a mark. The fighters watching from the perimeter lost themselves completely. The cheering that rose from the surviving soldiers was raw and uncontrolled. Finally, the blue spirit figure understood. It had encountered something it could not wear down, could not outlast, could not damage. The realization produced a shriek that carried across the entire battlefield. What remained of Krang's core turned and fled, heading north toward the cold country's border without looking back. I watched it go from my position above the field and smiled. That was exactly what I wanted. Inside a tactical command building in the cold country, a senior official was mid-sentence, savoring the sound of his own certainty. The chaos we've delivered to the Dragon Nation's border is the finest gift we could offer our allies. I can practically see the victory celebrations already. The building shook. Then it shook again, harder. A detonation from the borderline so massive, the structure itself groaned and swayed. The official's expression collapsed. He ran outside. On his nation's border, a colossal column of fire was still rising into the sky. You have defeated level 400 mechanical Krang. 14,904,627 experience points awarded. Level increased to 130. Third transition requirements met. Please proceed to the transition hall at your earliest convenience. Straight to third transition. The satisfaction that moved through me was complete and unhurried. I swept every piece of loot from the battlefield into storage and made my way quietly back to the rear camp. By the time I returned, the battle was winding down. With Krang gone, the remaining creatures were being handled the way you'd clear weeds from a garden. The guild's response teams moved through what was left with efficiency and no urgency. The guild coordinator raised his voice over the camp. Border crisis resolved. Every one of you has passed the guild entrance assessment. The celebration that followed was immediate and genuine. These were talented people from exceptional backgrounds, and even they hadn't fully believed until this moment that they'd actually made it into one of the country's 3 premier guilds. Several of them were looking toward the distant explosion site with something close to reverence, quietly grateful for the mechanical divine construct that had taken Krang off the board before it reached the city. The moment I stepped back into the group, almost every eye in the camp found me. The round-faced man reached me first, landing a hand on my shoulder hard enough to feel it. "Brother, you're back." We were genuinely worried. Having watched a real fight together, and having heard that I'd gone off alone to draw the sniper creatures away from Zhang Lingrong, the attitude of the entire group had rotated completely. The distance from earlier in the day was gone. Everyone pressed in, warm and familiar, wanting proximity to someone who'd earned it. "It's fine, the creatures are handled." I smiled and left it at that. Privately, I exhaled. Guild membership meant access to guild resources, dungeon runs, equipment networks, and passive benefits. Everything I needed moving forward was now legitimately available to me. Then, Zhang Lingrong walked over. She stopped in front of me, biting her lower lip lightly, face carrying more color than usual, eyes moving with an expression I couldn't immediately categorize. "Come with me for a moment." She pulled me to a corner of the camp, away from everyone. The group at the tent entrance immediately stretched their necks to watch, eyes wide with the energy of people who smell something interesting happening. Zhang Lingrong pulled in a breath, assembled her composure, and delivered the next words in her most official, professional tone. "I'm going to save you some trouble. Don't waste time developing feelings for me. Your combat ability is real. I'd hate to watch you throw your future away chasing something pointless. Understand? Absolute chaos from the eavesdroppers at the tent entrance. This guy cannot catch a break." I stared at her with my eyebrows halfway up my forehead. "What are you talking about? Don't play innocent." Her frown deepened. "I'm grateful you helped me, but..." And then it clicked. "Wait, no, you've completely misread this." I actually had to stop myself from laughing. "I think of you exactly the way I think of my aunt. That's it. That's the whole thing." Zhang Lingrong stepped back. The expression on her face went somewhere new entirely. "You have feelings for your aunt?" I stared at the sky for a moment and collected myself. "I mean, you look exactly like my aunt. Identical. That's why I kept looking at you. That's why I helped you. Nothing more. If you don't believe me, I have a photo right here." I pulled out my phone. Zhang Lingrong had stopped processing new information. The embarrassment that moved through her started somewhere below her feet and arrived at her face all at once. "I'm sorry. I was arrogant. Please stop talking. Please." She didn't look at the phone. She turned, became a streak of golden light, and was gone. I stood holding my phone in the wind with nothing to aim it at. Afterward, our entire intake group received official guild ID tags. I didn't linger. I went directly to the transition hall and pressed my palm to the third transition stele. The requirements appeared. Task 1. National Fortune Amplification. Clear the Calamity Tower and eliminate the Apex Disaster creature at the highest floor. Task 2. Guide the next generation. Escort a low-level player through at least one full level of growth. I looked at the panel for a moment. The third transition was already connecting to national scale objectives. That escalated faster than I expected. Killing disaster creatures to increase national fortune wasn't just a game mechanic. It had real consequences for the country. Stable weather, good harvests, balanced natural conditions. The creatures that appeared during Dragon Nation's New Year cycle were a specific category of disaster beast, and eliminating them carried genuine weight beyond the experience points. As for the mentoring requirement, I wasn't thinking about that yet. Monsters first. I sold off everything I'd looted from the border battle, equipped a full legendary set scaled to level 130, and picked up a Hellfire scatter cannon with infinite ammunition to go with it. Account balance climbed to 1.8 billion. Then I opened the skill tree and spent what I needed on a new awakened skill, Supernova Core Detonation. Passive, infinite grenades. Condensed technology grenades of any elemental attribute directly in hand. Explosive yield scales with user level. Active. On activation, hurl a Supernova Core grenade triggering a transcendent atmospheric detonation, not capable of producing a genuine planetary explosion, but more than sufficient to exceed the destructive output of 4 simultaneous continental scale blasts. I looked at my loadout for a moment. I had become a walking weapons depot with a passive that never ran out of ammunition. Satisfied, I activated the transport formation and headed for the Calamity Tower. Back in Dragon City, Zhang Xiyue was exactly where she always was, horizontal on the couch, tablet in hand, scrolling through the day's headlines. 100 consecutive wins, unrivaled reigns, supreme. Internet desperately seeks contact, nuclear level bullet output, stuns analysts, historic transition, tier incoming, celestial gold thread, cyber Guanyin, sighted at border, suspected divine entity. She read the screen name sitting at the top of every article, unrivaled. She pressed her lips together. That was the most aggressively uncool username she had ever read. There was exactly one person she knew who would choose something like that without irony. She set the tablet down, completely unbothered on the surface. Internally, she was doing quiet calculations. The boy's bloodline wasn't ordinary. His grandfather's class was Eternal Star God, level 950, capable of summoning stellar bodies larger than the sun on a whim. His maternal grandfather, Jiang Wanyao, held the class Cyber Sun, same tier, able to construct a mechanical Death Star in open space and use it as a marble. His parents were the eldest children of 2 major families, respectively. For someone with that ancestry to produce results like this, it wasn't surprising. It was inevitable. Her communicator activated. The vice president of Mechanical Labyrinth City was on the line, voice barely containing itself. The top-tier factions had been tracing the origin of the game that had fused with Earth for years. Based on recovered historical fragments, they had confirmed the existence of divine-class professions, each era producing its own apex. 2 had already passed, the Sacred Revival era and the 10,000 Forbidden Curses era. The current era's answer had now been identified. Mechanical Serpent, a divine-class profession deeply connected to firearm and mechanical type classes. Zhang Xiyue responded in a tone so calm it could have been discussing the weather. She already knew. Had known with about 99% certainty before he finished the sentence. She ended the call. Her brother-in-law's family had 800 schemes running at any given time. Whatever Yi Gang was becoming, that information could wait before it reached them. She picked up the tablet again. A new notification had already pushed to the top. Catastrophic explosion. Reported on Cold Nation border. Suspected cyber Guanyin involvement. Mechanical Labyrinth City. Assigned to Garrison. Mo City. Hardest guild entry mission on record. She stared at the headline for a long moment. That creature at the border. The explosion. The cyber Guanyin footage. Was that him too? She sat up slightly. Fine. If the nearest Mechanical Labyrinth City branch kept access logs, she was going to go pull them herself. That kid thought changing the subject was going to be enough to keep secrets from her.